London, 1907. Just as the rain began to patter against the leaded glass of Haversleigh Manor's upper windows, and the kitchen maid dropped a porcelain teacup in the scullery, Rosaline Jennings didn't flinch as the cup shattered. She was already kneeling by the hearth, scrubbing soot from the brass fireguard with salt and vinegar paste, her sleeves rolled to the elbow. The other maids gasped and gathered around the mess, but Rosaline kept working. A cracked cup was the least of their concerns. Dinner for 20 was due that night, and Lord Haversleigh's heir had returned from France 2 days early. "He's back," one of the girls whispered. "Viscount Callum Haversleigh?" Rosaline paused, her brush mid-air. "He wasn't meant to arrive till Thursday." The cook barked from the pantry. "Get your heads down, all of you." The house clattered into nervous motion. Callum Haversleigh, Cambridge-educated, fencing champion of the King's Club, heir to both title and scandal, was known for two things: precise expectations and a temper when they weren't met. Rosaline had seen him only once before, 5 years ago, when she was still a scullery girl and he'd just returned from a hunting trip in Scotland. He hadn't looked at her then, and he wouldn't now. She stood, wiped her hands on her apron, and slipped out the servants' door into the west corridor, quick, quiet, invisible. But as she rounded the corner toward the linen stores, a tall figure came striding from the opposite end, boots echoing sharply over the marble. Callum. He was older now, 29 if she remembered correctly. His dark hair was longer than fashion dictated, brushing the collar of his riding coat. He carried his gloves in one hand, walking fast, head bent as if troubled. She turned quickly to flatten herself against the stone arch, but her pail caught the edge of a side table. The clatter rang out like a gunshot. He stopped, looked up. Their eyes met. She expected the usual flicker of disdain, or worse, dismissal. But his gaze held a flicker of something else. Not recognition. Curiosity. "Are you hurt?" he asked. "No, my lord," she said quickly, lowering her eyes. "You work here?" He gestured toward the bucket. "Cleaning staff." "Yes, my lord." His eyes narrowed slightly, not in suspicion, but interest. "What's your name?" She hesitated. "Rosaline Jennings." "Jennings." He repeated it, as if the shape of it intrigued him. "You've been here long?" 7 years. 7. He studied her more closely. "You must have started as a girl." "I did." He nodded once, then continued walking, the sharp rhythm of his boots fading around the corner. Rosaline stood motionless for a moment, heart pounding, then knelt to retrieve the bucket. Her hands trembled. That night, as the drawing room glittered with gaslight and laughter, and the elite of Mayfair toasted Lord Haversleigh's return, Rosaline remained below stairs, polishing silver with a dull cloth. She told herself it had meant nothing, just a nobleman noticing a servant for half a moment. But the next morning, a note appeared on the cleaning ledger in a different hand than usual. "Fireplace in the west study needs attention. Ask for no one but Rosaline Jennings." She stared at it for a full minute. By noon, she was in the west study, alone but for the Viscount himself. Callum stood by the window, hands clasped behind him, watching the rain. The room smelled of pipe smoke and old paper. He didn't turn as she entered. "I assume you're aware of the scandal?" he said suddenly. She blinked. "My lord, my fencing opponent in Paris accused me of cheating. The papers had a field day. My father demanded I return." She swallowed. "I'm sorry." He turned now, eyes sharp. "You're not. You don't even know me." She paused. "You're right." "Then don't lie to me, Rosaline Jennings." Something in the way he said her name made her look up. He crossed the room slowly. "I've been raised in a world where everyone lies. Courtiers, friends, even family. But servants don't lie if they want to keep their jobs. That makes you the most honest person in this house." She said nothing. Her fingers curled around the cloth at her side. He stopped inches from her, gaze searching. "Tell me something no one else will," he said. "Is my father dying?" Her throat tightened. "I'm not supposed to speak of the family's health. I'm not asking as your master. I'm asking as a man who's been away too long." She hesitated. "Yes. The doctor comes nearly every day now." Callum closed his eyes briefly. Then, softer, "Thank you." The silence stretched. Rain tapped against the glass. Her hands were raw from work, her apron threadbare, her mind screaming to leave. But he didn't look disgusted. He looked tired and grateful. "I'll have the fireplace clean by supper," she said quietly. He nodded. "Good." As she knelt by the hearth, he moved to his desk and began to write. saying nothing else. But when she left, she found a folded piece of paper tucked into her apron pocket. It was a book list. Voltaire, Austen, and a scribbled note beneath. If you've read any of these, I'd like to hear your thoughts. The days that followed blurred into a strange rhythm. Callum summoned her to odd corners of the house for maintenance, he claimed. The library, the music room, once the conservatory. Each time, he asked her something new. Do you believe people can change? Why do you think the staff hate my cousin? Have you ever lied to survive? She answered honestly. Always. And found herself asking questions in return. Why did you really leave France? Do you miss your mother? Do you believe in forgiveness? Then came the duel. It happened the morning after his father collapsed during breakfast. The Viscount's cousin, Edgar, next in line if Callum was disinherited, accused him of sabotaging the estate accounts. The accusation was false, but it spread fast. Callum demanded satisfaction. Steel met steel at dawn, on the edge of Haversleigh's orchard. Rosaline was not supposed to be there. She wasn't supposed to know. But she slipped from the scullery with the gardener's coat over her uniform and watched from behind the hedgerow. The duel was quick. Edgar was wounded in the shoulder. Callum walked away without a mark. Hours later, he found her in the library, alone. You were there, he said. She didn't deny it. You could be dismissed for that. You could be ruined for what your cousin said. He studied her. Then, with quiet finality, said, I want you to be my tutor. She frowned. What? In character. In truth. The things I've forgotten how to see. That isn't appropriate. I don't care. You're a viscount. And you're the only person I trust. She took a breath. If I say yes, it changes everything. His voice dropped. That's what I want. Rosaline looked at him then, really looked. At the man beneath the title. At the way he waited, not demanding, not assuming, just hoping. Yes, she said. And when he took her hand, he didn't let go. The morning frost clung to the garden's inner hedges as Rosaline stepped carefully along the gravel path outside the conservatory. Her apron was pressed, her boots clean, but her chest was tight with uncertainty. She hadn't been summoned this time, she'd come of her own accord. Inside, the Viscount was alone at the long table where the orchids were overwintering. His sleeves were rolled and his hands dusted with soil. A potted lemon tree stood between them, its roots half covered. You're early, he said without looking up. I wasn't sure if I'd still be welcome. His fingers paused in the loam. You came anyway. I did. He straightened slowly, brushing dirt from his palms. I didn't expect you to. You asked me to teach you. He considered that, then gestured to a second stool. Sit. She removed her gloves before folding onto the wooden seat. The air smelled of citrus and damp earth. He passed her a trowel. Tell me something I don't see. She ran her thumb along the trowel's handle. You plant things too shallow. He raised a brow. The lemon tree won't thrive, she continued. Roots need darkness. You've left them near the surface. They'll dry out. He looked at the tree as if seeing it properly for the first time. I've always been told to show what I've done, he said. Make it visible. Some things grow better hidden. He nodded once, then shifted the pot and pressed the soil deeper. You speak plainly, he said. You asked for honesty. I didn't think it would be this quiet. They worked side by side for several minutes. She repotted the rosemary. He trimmed back the figure. The silence wasn't awkward. It breathed. Then he said, Have you ever been in love? She didn't look up. Once. Who? A stable hand. Years ago. What happened? He left for Canada. Said he'd send for me. Never did. He glanced at her. Do you still think of him? Only when I see the back gate. He kissed me there. Callum shifted, fingers curling around the pruning shears. You deserved better. I didn't expect better. He was quiet a moment, then said, That's the trouble, isn't it? We come to expect whatever the world hands us. She lifted her chin. But you don't. I used to. I don't want it anymore. His voice held no plea, but something in it made her heart catch. He wasn't flirting. He was reaching. She stood. I should be in the larder by now. He rose as well. Come back tomorrow. I might not be able to. He stepped forward, not touching her, but close enough that she could see the worn edge of his collar. Then I'll come to you. You'd risk being seen? I'm not afraid of being seen. I'm afraid of waiting too long. Her breath caught. The clock in the corridor struck once. She stepped back. Tomorrow, then, she said. That evening, while the rest of the staff gathered in the cellar to dice potatoes and share gossip, Rosaline stayed behind in the laundry. She boiled linens with lavender, fingers raw from lye, mind caught on the way his voice had softened when he'd said afraid. She hadn't known men like him could feel fear, or that they could speak it aloud. The next day, he kept his word. She was polishing the stairwell banister when he appeared at the bottom, his coat damp from the rain. "You walked here?" she asked. "I needed air. It's nearly a mile from the main house." "Worth it." She glanced at the hallway. "Empty. If Mrs. Alderton sees you." "She's in town." "I checked." "You're being reckless." "For once." She didn't step back as he climbed the stairs toward her. He paused when they were level, leaning lightly against the wall. "May I ask you something?" She nodded. "Do you believe people can be born into the wrong life?" She studied him. "Not wrong," she said, "but incomplete." He exhaled slowly. "That's what it feels like." "Then change it." "You make it sound simple." "It isn't. But it's not impossible." He looked at her then, truly looked. "You speak like someone who's already done it." "I've survived it." "That's not the same." "It's more." The silence after that felt charged, but not dangerous. He reached into his coat and pulled out a small book. "I thought you might like this," he said. She took it. A French novel, worn at the edges. "I can't read French." "Then I'll teach you." She looked up, surprised. "You taught me to see," he said. "Let me return the favor." She turned the book over in her hands. "If anyone finds out." "They won't. But if they do, I'll protect you." She met his eyes. "Don't promise what you can't keep." "I won't." And somehow, she believed him. The first snow came silently overnight, feathering the sloped slate roofs and muffling the world in white. Rosaline stood at the scullery window before dawn, watching the flakes gather on the garden hedges. Her breath fogged the glass. She didn't know how long she'd stood there, hands still damp from rinsing the meat knives, before she heard the copper bell from the west wing. Callum's bell. She dried her fingers on her apron and made her way through the silent corridors, her boots brushing the carpet with careful steps. When she knocked and entered, he was seated beside the hearth in a worn leather chair, one leg crossed over the other, coat draped across the back of the seat. He looked up from a letter without rising. "I thought you might still be asleep," he said. "Not since 5:30. He folded the letter and set it aside. "I've asked my solicitor to come tomorrow. I want to alter the household arrangements." Rosaline hesitated near the door. "Does that concern the staff?" "It concerns you." She stepped further in, but didn't sit. "What are you altering?" "I'm moving the study to the east wing. That space has better light. I want this room converted to a private reading salon. It would require oversight." "From the housekeeper?" "From you." She blinked. "I've spoken to Mrs. Alderton. She's agreed to promote you. Not in title yet, but in function. You'd be responsible for inventory, volumes, and correspondence. The position would bring a stipend." She stayed silent, arms tucked close to her sides. "You've earned it," he added. Her voice was quiet. "If anyone asks why, they won't. If they do, they'll be told it's because you speak 4 languages. I only read them." He gave a half nod. "Then you'll teach me the 4th. She looked at him fully now, eyes steady. "This will put me in the drawing books. The staff will talk. The neighbors too. They talk already. Let them." She crossed to the hearth and lifted the ash pan, her motion slow. "You're asking for trouble. I'm asking you to do what you're already doing. With a locked door instead of a broom closet." She turned her head. "And after that?" He stood. "I haven't thought that far." "Yes, you have." His jaw tightened. "Then I'll say it plainly. I want you to be able to walk into a room without apology. That isn't something a title gives." "I know." She set the pan down. "Then don't offer it like it is." He stepped closer. "What would you ask for, if it were your choice?" "I'd ask to leave the house through the front door. Just once. Without someone watching." He reached for her hand, but didn't take it. "Then I'll walk with you." The next day, with snow still clinging to the garden walls, Callum joined her at the servants' entrance just before the midday break. He was in his overcoat, collar turned up, gloves clasped loosely in his left hand. "Ready?" he asked. Rosaline nodded. They stepped out together, crossing the gravel path past the kitchen gardens and turning toward the lane. The air was sharp with cold, but sunlight gleamed off the frost, and for the first time in her memory, the world outside the estate felt open. They didn't speak as they walked. He offered his arm at the gate, and after a pause, she took it. 2 villagers passed them near the hedgerow, eyes wide, but neither spoke. When they reached the edge of the churchyard, he stopped. "This is where my mother is buried," he said. Rosaline looked toward the stone markers. You come here often? Not since I was a boy. He glanced at her, then down the lane. I used to think of this place as the end of the world. And now, he met her gaze. Now it feels like the beginning of something. Later, as they returned to the manor, he pressed a folded letter into her palm. Don't open it until you're alone. She waited until evening, after the lamps had been trimmed and the kitchen fire banked low. In her narrow room beneath the eaves, she unfolded the parchment with care. It was a formal note, written in his hand. Simple and clear. I've petitioned for your appointment as librarian. If approved, the office becomes yours at the new year. You'll have your own key, your own desk, and your name entered in the household registry. Not a servant, a staff. She pressed her hand to her chest, the words blurring slightly in the lantern light. At the bottom, beneath his signature, he'd written one final sentence. You were never beneath my notice. Only beyond my reach. Not anymore. The first Friday of the new year arrived with a hush of fog over the countryside, softening the sharp lines of Haversleigh Manor's gables and turning the hedgerows to pale silhouettes. In the library-turned-reading salon still smelling faintly of fresh varnish and beeswax, Rosaline sat alone at the tall window, sorting a shipment of books recently delivered from Grosvenor Street. Beside her, the leather-bound household registry lay open, her name newly inked in the margin beneath, Library Steward. The script was neat, formal, and unmistakably Callum's. She had not seen him all morning. The door clicked behind her, and she turned. Callum entered without a coat, damp at the shoulders from the mist. His gloves were tucked beneath one arm, and his gaze went first to the hearth, then to her hands. I passed the new copies of the Gazette in the corridor, he said. Your name is in the announcements. She closed the ledger. I didn't expect it so soon. They printed it early. Something about New Year's honors crowding the next issue. She moved to replace a volume on the top shelf. He followed, but didn't interrupt until she descended the step stool. My aunt has written, he said. She's returning from Nice this month. She remembers you. Rosaline's brow creased. From when? The garden fete. You brought her tea after she fainted near the rose trellis. I didn't think she noticed. She notices more than she lets on. She asked whether the girl with the calm hands still worked here. Rosaline looked toward the window. What did you tell her? That you were no longer in service. He waited. She turned, her voice quiet. Is this how you mean to do it, then? One conversation at a time. Callum stepped closer. If I move too quickly, I risk seeming careless. If I move too slowly, I lose you. You haven't asked me anything. He held her gaze. Would you come with me to the spring reception at Ashcombe Hall? She stared at him. As what? Not as a servant. Not as a scandal. As the woman I intend to marry. The silence pulled long between them. She crossed her arms, more to steady herself than in defiance. You don't know how they'll respond. I know exactly how they'll respond. I've already heard it from my father's solicitor, my cousin's wife, and the vicar's sister. And still you'd risk it. I'm not risking anything. I'm choosing. She looked at the floor. You'll be asked for proof. That I'm not after your money. Then I'll show them the account books you balanced. The records you corrected. The letters you answered in 3 languages. She swallowed. They'll say I trapped you. Then let them also say I begged you. He reached out, slowly, and took her hand at the wrist lightly, but without hesitation. She didn't pull away. You've never once asked me for more than I gave, he said. But I'm offering more now. Will you come? She nodded once. Then we'll start there. The days that followed were a tangle of preparations and quiet defiance. A seamstress arrived from the village, discreet and curious, but not unkind. Rosaline stood for fittings in the library, her back straight, her questions meticulous. The gown was to be navy silk with pearl buttons and no train, dignified, unadorned, and entirely her. On the morning of the reception, Callum waited in the entry hall as the carriage was brought round. He wore a charcoal coat and waistcoat, his cravat knotted with precise care. When Rosaline descended the main staircase, the staff fell still. She paused at the second landing. Callum looked up and extended his hand, wordless. She descended the final steps and placed her gloved fingers in his. He led her to the carriage, pausing just before the door. They'll stare, she murmured. Let them. The journey to Ashcombe passed in soft conversation and silence, the kind that needed no filling. When they arrived, the reception was already in motion, hundreds of guests in silk and satin, moving like currents through the grand halls. They entered side by side. Heads turned. No one spoke, not at first. But the murmur began to rise, curious, cautious, confounded. A dowager duchess narrowed her eyes. A baron's daughter dropped her fan. Callum offered his arm again. Ready? Rosaline took it. They walked the full length of the marbled hall, past portraits, past whispers, past the orchestra tuning its strings. And when the first strains of a waltz began, he turned to her without ceremony. May I? She gave a single nod, and he led her onto the floor. They danced. Not perfectly, but with quiet rhythm and unshaken calm. His hand at her waist, hers at his shoulder, their steps matched as if they'd always been meant to move together. By the second turn, the room had begun to shift. Not in approval, at least not yet, but in resignation. The heir to Haversleigh had made his choice, and she had not broken beneath its weight. Later, after the music faded and the carriages returned to the dark lanes, Rosaline stood with Callum beneath the portico at the manor's front entrance. Snow had begun to fall again, soft, slow, like breath. He turned to her. You know this won't be easy. I know. They'll find new ways to challenge you. Then I'll meet each one. He reached into his coat and drew out a small box, no velvet, no gold, just a simple walnut case. Inside, a ring of braided silver, no gem, only a single engraving on the inner edge. To be seen, to be chosen. He didn't kneel. Will you marry me? He asked. Rosaline looked at him. The man she had scrubbed hearths beneath, argued within whispers, taught to see. Yes, she said, and his hand didn't tremble as he slipped the ring onto hers.